the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And for his first weekly hit of the Josh Harris era, ladies and gentlemen, television's Clinton Yates.
What's up, Gregory? How are you? You must feel great coming off literally the greatest day of your career this week. I just want to say quickly to everybody down there, every show, every station, look, I grew up in D.C. I've listened to everybody that was on air yesterday. And from a simple production of show status, like what happened was one thing. The fact that you guys pulled that off as, you know, a cluster to me was as impressive as anything else. So good job on all the hard work, Gregory. And you got to have the big moment too.
I did. As I said yesterday, I felt very fortunate. The sale announcement did not have to come between 4 and 7, but it did, and so I made sure I was as ready as I possibly could be. It was really great, man. Credit to my bosses because they're the ones that did the work. And it was funny because I was like, can I do this? Can I help with that? And it was literally like, no, man, do your show. Focus on the show. And so we did the show, and it seems that well received and that we did a good job.
That's why you get in the radio, by the way, kiddos. Television stations aren't putting events on like that. Your local podcast is at a freaking bookstore. They're not out there getting after it at the bullpen. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's literally why a lot of us got into this business, because you just might have the chance to do something like that, and you nailed it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I mean, it's funny because the only thing that I can really remotely compare it to is the night the Caps won the Cup.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Nats winning the World Series did a little bit or similar as well. For me, that just happened at a time of year that I was still on the beat and in full football mode. The Caps win the Stanley Cup in the middle of June, where I'm available to do non-football things, and so I happened to be at Capital One Arena. Obviously, they win it in Vegas, but I was there at the watch party, and it is the only night of my career, the only day of my career that remotely comes close to yesterday. And the fact that it is a team sale, like they're always a big deal from a news standpoint, but it just underscores how important it is for the city to get their team back, to rebuild that sense of community, that it goes from this guy that everyone hates to someone that gives you hope.
I would almost go far as to say it's a rebirth rather than a rebuild. You know, one of the things that's been interesting about not being in D.C. and kind of divorcing myself from what the franchise was with Dan Snyder was that you got to get a look at how much people actually cared about that franchise and whether or not they really had much of an impact. And the truth is that they didn't. And the secondary truth is that that's actually probably a good thing. If you were a fan that stuck around D.C. and around FedEx Field and around Ashburn, and I don't know, even went to Richmond, Gregory, you are the kind of person that has the dedication of a fan that I don't know how well rivaled you are in the NFL right now. And so looking at this as a rebuilding, I don't actually even think makes sense. This has to be something new. You are effectively a franchise that is an expansion team at this point because you're not in a position to really celebrate the past for obvious reasons, but at the same time, so many people have left that you're basically starting from scratch, and that is not a knock. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that to me is a position of strength in the concept of, if you were there, you're a fan. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no bandwagon humans that are saying, oh, yeah, I was there this, I was there that. If I was still in D.C. and I was still in Commander's Center, those people would be getting rejected for the simple reason that, look, you can come back to the squad in terms of what you believe in terms of the burgundy and gold and all that, but, like, there are people that did the dirt. All right, we know those people, and I am very proud of them right now. And the reason I bring that up is because your friend, Mr. Harris, better be listening to those people when it comes time to start anything as far as how that franchise operates. Never mind what happens on the football field. Showed up, showed out.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say, though, where it's not, it can't be a complete start over because that ignores the immense passion. And I think being there yesterday, like, you feel that you don't get that excitement for an expansion team, right?
No,
like, there's something.
Let me jump in there quickly, Craig.
Yeah,
I know, but that's why it is in your own mind. It's it has to be that way because that's basically where you're starting. But it's going to be the best expansion situation you've ever seen. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's only sort of in name in the context of you're getting a fresh start, not because nothing that's ever been there. Think of the Browns, for example. Not a dissimilar sort of situation. Their team left. Literally went to Baltimore. They kept the rights, and when they came back, that wasn't an expansion team, but it was. This is more akin to that, is what I'm saying, Craig, than it is say, the Jaguars showing up on a helicopter in a field that nobody's ever heard of, you know.
Yeah, no, that the Browns is actually a really great comparison. It just gave me a segment idea. We'll probably have someone from Cleveland on next week because that's a really interesting one. But it also it hit me really hard yesterday because we had Doc and we had B. Mitch on the set, and Doc told a story of how when he came as a player, people he didn't know would just be like, "You come over for dinner," and that sense of community, and that's why he has been so staunch in supporting the players through all of this. And it's like I want them to have what I had. I want them to experience what it's like when this team is cooking and when it's something that the community is proud of, because there's just an openness and a togetherness that is pretty unique in sports. And I was really touched by that yesterday, and Brian saying some of the same things as well. For you personally, we've talked so much about this over the last 8 months. And I'm just curious when the moment hits, when the news comes across. I don't know how you consumed it, whether it was Adam's tweet or listening in or whatever it was. But the moment hits, Dan doesn't own the team anymore. As someone who, as a fan, left.
Yeah.
How did it hit you?
I was happier for you guys, than anything. I mean, if I'm being honest, this is one of those deals where something that is supposed to have been. How do I say this? This is one of those or something that you've wanted to happen for a long time. As time went on, as the world evolved, as the court cases added up, as the controversies hit more headlines, this became far less about football and what I even cared about than it became about the humans that I knew in town that had their lives ruined as a result of this franchise. And so for me, this was ultimately a story of some level of vindication for all of these people who basically bought into the goodwill of the franchise, bought into exactly what you referred to in terms of the fan base loving the team, but unfortunately were screwed by the greed and avarice of small men. I got to say, I might have to retire the term Ashburnistan, and not out of any sort of joking, but that's what this was about. It was about that ownership group and the fact that they couldn't get out of their own way, the greed and avarice of small men ruining a once proud nation. By the time it got to the announcement, it was okay, finally, Nixon, get on the helicopter, get out of here. You know what I mean? And we had already understood what the effects of him being around this long were. So, yeah, there was some relief, but ultimately I'm happiest for the people that hung around, that stayed, that not only did not give up, but fought back while still rooting for what they loved. That was something I did not have in me. You know what I mean? And for those who did, well, now's your reward, and you deserve it. It's as simple as that.
For sure. Amen. Period. New. Not just new paragraph. New chapter. You still really like football. We're friends. I know this about you. You really like football
enough, but
it's not just the X's and O's and stuff, but the drama of the sport, what makes it fun to talk about on television and radio and in group chats and amongst buddies and the whole deal.
Correct.
Do you think that you will find yourself rooting for the Washington Commanders when they take the field on Sundays in the dump that will eventually be replaced and other stadiums around the NFL?
As much as I will root for any team in, I guess, the NFC, why not? I mean, the bottom line is that that's the stadium that I grew up learning about sports in general in terms of going to RFK. Not that they're playing there, but, there's a large part of me that my love for football died when Sean Taylor passed as well. So my stance on the game has kind of moved backwards, but I do enjoy hanging out with my friends and enjoying the team that they enjoy. I'm always rooting for that team for the sake of the fans. And that's everybody I grew up with, everybody who still lives there. Am I going to be out here wearing burgundy and gold? No, I don't even live there anymore. You know what I'm saying? I'm in Los Angeles. I act like I'm a Bolts fan just so I can, tell people something stupid in the bars. But ultimately, I root for the league in general as a fan now, just in terms of what I watch and what I consume for my job. However, I will say this. I'll bet there are a lot more people that are willing to come back, but they're going to be slow because of all the things we still the scars are still fresh if you were a football team fan, but not necessarily a huge football fan. There were a lot of those people that existed and still continue to exist in the DC metro area. And that was the whole thing about how so much of the fan base got pushed back. It was the people who were like, all right, man, I'm just here to kind of have a good time. I'm not here to be arguing about whether or not the team name should change because it should, whether or not you're respecting people in the front office because you're not. All of that had people out of the door well more than the football. And so I think the football, to your point, Craig, will make it the easiest to return if they're good. Now, Our close personal friend Mina Kimes is big on their defense. We'll see what happens. But I will caution people to understand that running a football team, winning Super Bowls, still mega difficult, okay? This is not going to necessarily be some contender just because Dan Snyder is gone. I look forward to what Harris can do, and more so than anything, from a expansion franchise point, if you will, I'm just interested to see how everything kind of off the field goes. Like, what is this going to look like? Who is going to be in the front office? What are you going to do on game days? Like, on the most basic granular level, because we have been tilling this bad soil for multiple harvests, Craig. You know what I'm saying? Can the farm still grow crops is what the question is, and it'll be fun to see.
That is a heck of an analogy. Clinton Yates with us here on the Team 980. All right, Mr. Los Angeles. Magic Johnson is also part of this ownership group. He does an interview on the Today Show this morning. It is very clear to me that he is going to play a significant role here and the community building and the things that he is wonderful at and has been for decades at this point. You have a front row seat to that with how he does it with the Dodgers and the Sparks in Los Angeles, not to mention he is, Mr. Los Angeles.
Right.
So what role does Magic have here, and what are some of the things that they've done with the Dodgers to ingratiate themselves in the community, and how do you think those things will work in Washington?
Well, I would say more importantly to what Magic brings to the table is not just what he's done with the Dodgers or the Sparks, it's what he's done with his actual businesses. Right. Magic Johnson is a businessman in a lot of Black America, and that credibility alone, which are not things you're necessarily going to see. I mean, we know about his movie theaters and therefore so on and so forth, but what it brings is the credibility in communication, and that is not just locally here in Los Angeles. That's not just nationally, as it would affect the D.C. area. That's globally. If Magic Johnson walks into the building, everybody is paying attention to what he has to say, and not just because he's a superstar, because he's a fantastic businessman, and he understands what it takes. That is the level of credibility that I would go so far as to say this franchise has literally never had. All right? The Squire Jack Kent Cook was not some up-and-standing individual known as a relative huckster in the overall scheme of things. Let's be real. Magic it's not about him being the primary owner. It's not even about him being the face of the franchise. It's about the fact that he has the connections, has the track record, and has, for lack of a better term, the receipts to show you as much. It's hard for me to say this without sounding like it's sort of a tokenism thing, because it's not. But Magic is simply a guy you want in the room, because that has ultimately been one of the biggest problems of what the Washington football franchise has, is you thought to yourself, there was nobody here to say no to this. There was nobody here to tell you this was a bad idea. There was nobody here to suggest a better way. I think that Magic's credibility, not just in terms of himself, but who his team is and who he decides to be a part of things, is exactly what it is. The brother was a superstar as a player, superstar champion, global representative in basketball, and a tremendous businessman in America. No reason not to let him have any say that he wants in the entire process.
All right. Last thing for you on the way out, unrelated to all of this. The Women's World Cup thread continues here.
Yes.
If you know, you know. Most excited thing, or most thing you're most excited about for the U.S. tonight / in this tournament as they take on Vietnam, first game of their title defense.
It's got to be Crystal Dunn. There's some controversy over the fact that she was not named a captain on this team, and by some controversy, I mean we are very pissed in this household. That's another story. But she's at a stage in her career now where sort of all of this nonsense about her being an up-and-coming next, this, that, and the third, that's all out of the window. She is the veteran. She is a mother. She is arguably one of the more calming presences on any team in this tournament. Never mind just the U.S. women's national team. And they're starting tonight in the debutantes against Vietnam, which is another story just in terms of how great this tournament is with all of the new teams. There's 8 new teams. The Philippines had a nice little matchup last night against the Swiss. Terrible penalty call in that match, by the way, that went against the Filipinos. But I'm looking forward to Crystal Dunn's tournament. I really am. I think it's a position where you do not see women who look like her in leadership roles that people know going in there are going to be in leadership roles in international tournaments. She unfortunately, in my opinion, I'll repeat it again, got slighted as the captain, but she's the lifeblood of that team in many ways for a lot of these youngsters who are on that squad that are making their initial caps into these forays of tournaments. And so she's the guiding light of the squad as far as I'm concerned. I know that there are people who people consider better players in terms of Morgan, et cetera, but as she goes, temperament-wise, attitude-wise, never mind skill-wise, I think that's very much what this team is going to define themselves as quickly. I just want to point this out. Tamara Nickel wrote a profile about her in Anscape. pledge you to go check that out. She was with her over many months. You'll get an idea into the inside of what's going on in Crystal's mind heading into this tournament.
Crystal's mind's a funky place. I've sat down with her before. She's a character.
She is
in the best possible way.
Right.
Like, I don't know how we got her to sit down. Well, I do know how we got her to sit down for an hour. It was because my podcast co-host on the Train with the Best podcast was her trainer at the time.
I was going to say, because you have a personal relationship.
But
that's
getting Crystal to literally sit still for an hour is damn near impossible because she tends to squirm a little bit.
Active human.
She is an active. That is a good way to put it. She is an active human. And I will say this on like the captaincy front, it's ridiculous that she wasn't already like part of the co-captaincy, right? Like Becky Sauerbrunn, nobody doubts that. Lindsay Horan's a phenomenal leader and was already a co-captain, but there's no reason that Crystal wasn't a third part of that triumvirate and thus with the armband. But I heard Lindsay say recently in an interview, like one of the people she looks to as the captain is Crystal. They played together in Portland for a long time. Yeah, she should have the damn armband. But there's no doubt within it doesn't make sense. I'm admitting that.
Okay.
But within the team, she is definitely someone that is incredibly well respected and looked at and important for all the reasons, whether there's a piece of cloth around her arm or not.
Can I just say this? And I know you've got your USA jersey on right now for those of you who are not watching on YouTube. This tournament expanded features not only a bunch of, we'll just say Americans who are playing for their home nations, not only a bunch of players from NWSL teams, but again, there are a lot of players globally that are fantastic and contribute to this game, specifically the women's game, that are worth paying attention to. It is not necessary to go full jingoistic on this to enjoy it. You can watch the tournament, y'all, the tournament, as we like to say on Horn, and enjoy this on a lot of levels, okay? The quality of play in women's soccer, especially on the national team level, is as high as it's ever been in my mind. So, if you want to go out there and root for the red, white, and blue, that's one thing, but you're missing out on a good tournament if you don't want to pay attention to only people that are wearing, what you're wearing right now.
Yeah, I will watch as many games as my sleep schedule and the New Zealand time difference allows.
West Coast helping me out on this one.
That is major for you. This happens to be the jersey of a personal friend, Ashley Sanchez. So we're rocking that.
All right, that's enough name drops for you for one segment.
It's just I live in that world, man. It is what it is.
I hear you, brother.
World you live in, television. That's
Correct.
Television's Clinton Yates. You can watch him on Around the Horn. Of course, and also you're doing some LA radio. I know today as well.
I'll be on the air later today. Not that anybody wants to hear that, but I'll be on from 4 to 6 Pacific. ESPN LA.
What are you guys talking about? No, okay, that's enough.
It's Otani talk. Otani talk.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That is big. I don't think it's much of a topic here. I don't think we're going to be in the mix. The old Washington Nationals.
The Orioles have an outside chance of looking at him, but that's another discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Perhaps that's next week's discussion. All right. Thanks for coming on as always.
Goodbye, Gregory. I'm glad you're in DC.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.